Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Color Authority. This is Judith Van Vliet, podcasting out of Italy, Milan. I'm going to be talking today to Anat Lechner. She has a PhD and is a professor of business management at the Stern School of Business, New York University, where she focuses on disruptive leadership, innovation, and strategic change. She's also the founder of Huedata Inc, a color intelligence company. As a former research fellow at McKinsey Co, Anat has advised to global Fortune 100 firms in the financial services, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, energy, food, high-tech, design, and retail industries. She has had numerous appearances on NYT, WSJ, BBC, ABC, Forbes, and other premier global media outlets. Anat holds also an MBA and a PhD indeed in organization management from Rutgers University in New Jersey. Good morning, Anat, and welcome to the Color Authority. How are you today?
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me. I'm good. I'm excited about our upcoming talk. Should be interesting to talk about color.
And then also I think just a little bit about yourself. Obviously people just heard also your biography, what you do, and we were just chatting about how our lives were so different, right? How we are both born in different countries and then we moved to different countries, and how all of that has an influence on who we are, what jobs we have, and how we look at color. So that's another reason why I look very much forward to this conversation. Me here in Milan, and you are currently in Tel Aviv, Israel, right?
That's correct. It's actually funny how things unfold this way.
It is, exactly, yeah. So one of the first questions I ask everybody as just like a warm-up, and that is also for you, Anat, what is color to you?
The first thing that comes to mind to me is mystery. This is the very first thing. It's mystery. It's mystery because I don't know what the world looks like if it's only black and white. So what's the added dimension now that, color brings? It's mystery because my relationship with color started because of that. So the first time I really paid attention in a more, we'll call it dedicated, serious way, is I'll take you back to a very dreary library, 1997. I'm writing a chapter in my PhD dissertation, which is about how companies innovate. And I happened to study innovation in a paint company, which when I was invited to do this work, I did not think much about innovation in a paint company. It wasn't a trivial choice. In fact, I was trying to study it in a pharmaceutical company, which kind of to me made more sense given my background. As fate wants it, I find myself in a paint company, and then I sit in the library and I have to justify why I studied innovation in a company that does paint, of all things. So it's before Google, it's before everything, right? It's just when the continents started to separate, I think. And I go and I pick a book on industries because I have to describe the paint industry. I go to the value, the volume of P, pharmaceuticals, petroleum, whichever other, right? Hundreds of pages written on the industry. When I flip to the paint industry, there are 3 pages in this. This is a very thick book. 3 pages. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to work so hard now to kind of beef up this story, right? And the volume starts with color is in everything, and yet we know so little about it. And I'm sitting there, it's a really gray, what I remember is a very dreary environment, gray day, all rains, just terrible. And I'm thinking about, I stopped there, right? I'm schooled, I've studied philosophy and all that. So these ideas trigger me to think. I'm thinking, what else is in everything? And yet we know so little about that. What else? What else is in everything? Love is in everything. We know quite a bit about love. Teeth is in everything. We kind of know a lot about dental issues. Sand is everywhere. We know quite a bit about that. What does it mean that color is in everything and yet we know so little about it? That started my affair with color, which is not just love affair. It's a dense affair, and so it's a mystery, and it is still a mystery, even though I've spent now 25 years trying to demystify it.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You come indeed from let's say from all the people I've met in color, there's the most do come still from a design background. You come from the business background. That's very clear. So that was what triggered you, right? Because there was not a lot known about. You were just like, then I just need to learn about this. I need to find this out. Was that the reason why you really entered color?
So then the next layer on this, you're exactly right. Given I'm thinking business most days, right? Most of the time, most of the days, I'm thinking, but we react to color commercially. As consumers, we react to color all day long. I would not buy the car that I drive in if it wasn't for the color that I like. I wouldn't buy anything if it wasn't for the colors that I like. And if I dislike the color, I just don't buy it. Yeah. So I'm thinking, how do people make these color decisions commercially? If we know so little about color, then how do these decisions get made? It's one thing if you're Van Gogh and you decide to, whatever your composition is, right? It's another thing if you're Zara. How does that work? And I started to pay attention, right? I have my business clients, right, are the pharmaceuticals, the car industry, the banking industry. I started to pay attention to their color offerings. How do they package themselves? But it was lame. I didn't have a benchmark. I didn't have a framework. I didn't have a strategy. I surely didn't have any data. Yeah. So I was just observing it for a long while and thinking on this. And to the point that you're asking on, it was the interface between color and business that triggered me. I didn't come to it thinking aesthetics per se. I didn't come to it thinking history of color evolution, or surely not the mechanics of making color accurate, or I didn't even know to say all these things that today I'm very fluent in the color conversation, right? Or the color speak, but it wasn't my case back then. So I was just looking at the interface between color and business, and that's what triggered my increased interest in this.
Yeah. And then you founded Huedata, a couple of years ago, you founded Huedata together with your partner. And it seems indeed to be a service in the color industry for indeed professionals, such as obviously also myself, to consult selecting the right color for their products based on indeed data, statistics. Right. Something that is really, really there, going beyond the emotional side of you liking it, or depending on how your mood is that day. Can you a little bit explain what exactly that service is that you're offering?
Yeah. So I have to take you back for a few minutes and just kind of show you how the idea evolved, because it came out of something, right? As is with pretty much everything else. So, from 1997 into 2007, I'm studying color. I'm beginning to talk about it in conferences. I'm beginning to formulate an idea about color strategy, which to me is a hybrid between the world of color and my world as a strategic, business person. Thinking on how do we make decisions on colors? What are the benchmarks that we need to consider? What is the use case? What are the personas we are designing for? How do we think on the cultural context in which they exist? What's the context of the product? Is pink in cars the same as pink in nail polish? And questions of that nature, right? And back then, no one speaks on data. That's not even a conversation in the business world, let alone in the design world. Okay. But you ought to think more, I'll call it methodically, on the decision-making process. So I learned that color has a manufacturing issue and it's not always consistent. And so some colors are consistent and others are not. I learned about personify the offering. I learned about the cultural context. But I start thinking on where is the data to make these decisions? Where is the research foundation? What are we basing the decisions on? And it's not until 2006-07 when a company that's coding pills for the pharmaceutical industry is giving us a call, and they have a question. And the question that they have is, we're approached by Pfizer, Merck, Roche, all the pharmaceutical companies that, by the way, are all my clients, right? We're approached by them to help them design a brand for their new introductions. So Pfizer will come in and they will say, we are introducing a drug for the target audience is men age 50 to 70. It's for heart condition. Mm-hmm. It's meant to communicate that the drug will be fast acting, reliable, and also slow release throughout the day. So it's released, fast acting upon release. It's slow release throughout the day. It's targeting this constituent. And we're going to launch it in 10 jurisdictions, the 5 big in Europe. In Asia, we're going to go to China and to India and to Japan, and then we're going to launch it in Canada and the US. What color should it be? Oh. Now, this company is based in Pennsylvania. They can do all the colors. They don't have any problem producing whichever color you want. The question is, which color should it be so it'll communicate these attributes in all these cultural contexts for this particular audience? This is not a decision that can be made based on I like it or I dislike it. Based on, I have good experience with green, but I like those deep shades. It doesn't work this way. So they come to us to have us answer this question. We don't have data back then. And so we launch a study. It's a very expensive study. It takes a year and a half from A to Z. And eventually we have an answer that comes out of 2,000 some, and the largest in its sector study. It was published, was referenced. I start to think on, is there a better way? Because, in the business world, we never make
is a lot of time. I mean,
we never make a single decision without data, and we're never going to spend so much time collecting it. We've already built it in so many domains of the business space, and no one will make a decision based on I like it or I don't like it. And if they do, they risk their career at times. It's not flying. Now I'm thinking, so the designers that are in the business world and are designing for people who need to consume it, are they not subject to the same set of dynamics? Just like a bank manager needing to give you an advice on where to invest your portfolio. Isn't it the same set of dynamics? How do you rationalize your decisions? So I'm back and then doing another project with IBM, the team that's built Watson for IBM, which is the big data engine, right? And I'm thinking we should build a database for all the colors in commercial application so people can see. They can see what happened in fashion. They can see what happened in the car industry. They can see how people brand themselves and what are the logos in which industry for which company. They can get informed. Whether or not they are going to use it to then finalize the decision is up to the designer. But the designer can then rationalize, or the decision maker, the color decision maker. It's not always a designer. It can be a designer, it can be a merchandiser, it can be a marketeer, brand agency, so forth, right? That people can rationalize why they chose the colors that they did. And so as is the utility of any database, there are three values that come out of a database. If it's good, assuming the database has integrity to it, right? It's the ability to inform a decision. It's the ability to inspire a decision. Oh, I didn't think of that option. And it's the ability to validate a decision. I'm thinking of an option. What's my reference to validate it? So I can help you inform your decision. I can help inspire your decision, and I can help you validate your decision. And out of that came a very long labor of building, or kind of process of building the Huedata entity, because the complexity of building it is enormous.
I can imagine.
Enormous. So I can take you through that if you're interested, but maybe that's the less, I don't know how interesting that is for anyone to listen on. But the complexity, just, building a database is the art of structuring the unstructured. That's actually what that is, right? And color is inherently unstructured, because the entity called color is fluid, is dynamic, is all-encompassing, is impossible to parse, is impossible to delineate. We make arbitrary choices on when red finishes and say orange begins. These are arbitrary calls.
It's all subjective.
Yeah. It's very subjective. It's contextual. I mean, there's so many reasons why this unstructured space is so difficult to structure.
Yeah.
right? It's in the domain of the intangible, emotional, philosophical, fluid, societal, blah, blah, blah. Lots of words, all of which tells you it doesn't lend itself to an Excel spreadsheet.
Yes, exactly. Which indeed, people who come from my field don't tend to like Excel or data generally.
Exactly.
And also, we don't tend to be good at it. I mean, I remember mathematics. That was going through high school. It was just a disaster. You know, I couldn't do it.
I know. But you see, the interesting thing, and I appreciate that myself, by the way, even coming from the business world, I'm on the soft side of the business world, and I didn't like mathematics either, nor was I particularly successful in this. But because of the complexity of everything that we're doing right now, and the complexity of the world that we're trying to participate in effectively, you got to work with other people who speak different languages, not necessarily English, Dutch, and so forth, right? But some people do think in data, and some people need to take your decision and rationalize it within a different context. Yeah. So they need to make sure that, you know, the products that they enter into the market actually have a business case for them.
Yeah.
And color becomes, 80% of the decision to buy something, right? Color becomes a very important criterion. So if you have no data to make that decision based on, how are you thinking on this?
Yeah, because rationalizing color that's what you're helping brands with, and so many other people. I mean, that is a topic for all of us. I mean, I even had a conversation about this yesterday with one of my clients, talking obviously about color. Now, we as professionals, we know why we pick a certain color, and we do the storytelling, we do our data. Now, maybe not data, but we do tend to do our trend research. We do look upon to statistics where possible. But indeed, convincing clients, internal or external counterparts, is not easy. So how do you take, let's just take a brand that needs to figure out the new color for, or needs a validation for a certain color on a given product? How do you take them, let's say, by the hands? And how do you help them do that?
Yeah. So there are different ways and different approaches. I'll anchor this in a quick story of a company that came to us, and they are in the cosmetics business. And they were looking at a new nail polish line, which they introduce every 6 weeks or so. So the pace of that is tremendous. And they asked us a really interesting question, which was, where does a new color begin? How do we know? So you're talking about trends, right? How do we capture the trends? How do we know where color begins? And color can begin in couture in Paris, and color can begin on the streets, on the favelas in Rio, and color can begin in some crazy talk on social because of the dress that changes its colors. And color can begin, today, color can begin by influencers. Color can begin in multiple places. So the ability of a single mind to actually stay on top of all those domains and continuously curb them, it's impossible.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's impossible. And I have to say that, educators, as I am as well, are same as designers. We come from a world where our work is craft. So the methodology behind it, the ability, we want to stay informed, we want to stay relevant. It's important for us to be solid in the consultation that we provide, and again be able to rationalize it. And so we do the work of reading and informing ourselves and going to shows and all that. And in many ways, this is the 20th century way of working. We just didn't graduate out of it to add, So it's just like, think on your grandfather's banker. They did exactly the same thing. They stayed on top. They read the Wall Street Journal or whatever, Financial Times, to stay on top of the trends. So when your grandfather came to the bank to ask where to invest, they were able to give them an advice, right, which was informed. But the information from which they drew their advice was actually very limited. And today, this issue is on steroids because there's so much information in the world, it's impossible. So how do we take a client or a person that are interested in getting to an answer? What can we offer? We can offer you an analysis of, say, 30 years of fashion. You can follow a single designer. You can follow a bunch of designers. And when I say follow, think Google. You click you put a query into the system, you get an analysis. You don't have to go and see what Gucci did over the past 50 years, which in any case you will not be able to do. You will not be able to find out what Gucci did in the past 50 years or 30, to be maybe more precise. But for me, it's a click, and I can tell you exactly what Gucci did. All the shows analyzed to the RGB or the hex value, or LAB value, whichever value you're working with, or any, we can reference against any value, NCS, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any notation, but it's a click away. And I can show you where Gucci stood out with a shade of whatever orange when no one else did. And then I can show you how this translated into everybody went orange a season later. So I can find those influencers within fashion because I have historical data, and it's all structured, analyzed, visualized, and I can manipulate it whichever way I want, as is the case with any data. Yeah. Just like your health data or any data, right? So I can take you through that. I can take you through all the data that I grab from social media. Anytime somebody mentions color, I have it in my data. So it's a worldwide, up to the minute data. So if you need to launch something for an audience in the UK, whenever, in the next month or so, I can give you a sense of what's the color sentiment.
So you get really localized color feeling data.
To the extent that I can draw that from, social media channels, with some people have their profile that I can grab and analyze location.
Which I guess is most people.
Exactly. Then I can tell you, these are the comments that are coming now from the UK. And these are the comments that are coming now from the Netherlands, right? I can be a whole lot more granular and, most importantly, comprehensive and real time.
Yeah.
So
how do you gather all that data? I mean, obviously it's machine learning. I get that, but how? I mean, even 50 years ago, how do you do that?
So you have to identify the sources from which you can grab data, for one that's legit to take, right? Or else partner with data providers. To give you an example, it's absolutely legit to grab data from Instagram or from Twitter or from Pinterest, and to run sentiment analysis on this, because we have the algorithms that can do that. So you know if it's a positive comment, if it's a negative comment, the location of it. This is easy to do. Relatively speaking, if you know how to do it, it's easy to do. You can grab data from news. You can identify your influencers. You can decide who you track. You can go and grab the logos of companies. So the car shows, or the many sources I have on new data today. Data on fashion that goes back to the 80s. Data on cars that goes back to the previous century, deep in the previous century. Data on logos that is about 1 million data points of companies' logos around the world, classified by industry, by company's age, by company's size. I can analyze it whichever way I want. The names of colors. How many times you struggle if you introduce a new color, right? You're a painting company, you introduce a new color, you have to call it something, right? God, people struggle with this, right?
Sky blue again, yay.
Yeah, exactly. And the funny thing is, you don't even know that you're saying it again, because you think you might be right? Because sky blue, somebody must have thought on this, right? Perhaps you can consult. We have 1.5 million names in the database. So if you want to know what a shade of pink is called, I can tell you. So, the depth of the data.
So it inspires, and it has depth of the data.
Yeah, the depth of the data is enormous. The breadth of the data is enormous. We keep it up to date. Mm-hmm. So anytime new data enters, fashion has fashion weeks. Car has car shows and years to them, right? Logos do not. So you have to kind of take a look every now and then on what's been added, because new companies are coming, new old companies are going. So you got to stay fresh this way. I have all the art back to the 13th century and all the way to today.
That's maybe even more surprisingly, because art goes back to, well, literally, I mean, we can't even go back to that era. And that's just that even, so I get that you can get all the data, because as soon as the internet existed, that's when you can start gathering. But then all that data from before, somebody has to enter it.
So the beauty of this is there are people that entered all the data on the colors of birds. So I have it. There are people who entered all the data on the colors of butterflies. Yeah. There are people who entered all the data on the colors of flowers.
So passionate people about a certain topic, they wanted to share information, and you can gather that.
And I can gather that either through collaborations or people open their API so that you can utilize this data, data with permission, data that is you can use. The issue here is to identify the sources, to identify what do you even want to talk about. If it's cosmetics, if it's cars, if it's nature, if it's space, right? Identify what you want to talk about. Identify the data sources, identify or build the relationships to actually grab the data. And then the work begins. This is not the work. This is pre-work.
Yeah.
The work is to structure it within the database, is to read the data correctly, and then to analyze it, and then to visualize it, and then to put analysis that are for the user to run. So the tools with which the user can run this. So it's like, Google, when they were founded on the idea that they will organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and usable.
Yeah.
That's their raison d'être. That's their vision.
Yeah, true.
And for us coming into this, it was easy for me to take this idea and think on it within the context of color. Organize the world's color information and make it universally accessible and usable. So just like life before Google forced you to experience the world the way you experienced it. You grew up in a certain place, you read the news, that was your perspective on the world. That certain place and the news that came to you the way they were dished to you. Can you compare that with your experience today as a person who lives in the world of, the age of the internet, the age of AI? It's incomprehensible how much of a shift.
It's impossible. And I think that's why people are so confused as well. And what I'm seeing a lot is people who do color trends, which I'm one of those, and many of them are. There is and now everybody tends to be doing it because color is big, color is huge. Everybody has understood the power of color, and everybody can do color or color trends. And I think that's where it gets so confusing. And that's also how a data service such as yours can at least create, let's say, in the end, a bottom line to the inspiration, to the, let's say, the aesthetical part. Because one thing is rationalizing color, but where does that leave the emotional part for people? Most people that are listening are designers, and so how do you balance that?
So the beauty of this is, it's funny how I think we know that the world is some sort of a kaleidoscope experience, right? Everything is mirrored in everything else, right? So we, again, artificially say, you're in the design space, I'm in the business space. At the end, we're in the space of making sense of our lives. It's just a different way to do it, right? And inform and inspire our lives to go to a better place. So in the business world, you will show someone data, and then they can make a decision where they want to take it next. Mm-hmm. And that's the beauty. You don't start from nothing. You start from a very robust something, but it pushes you, we'll call it inductively, not deductively, inductively. It pushes you creatively to a new place. So if I show you we were starting to talk earlier on, say, a company that wants to brand itself or rebrand itself within, say, financial service. I can show you within a click what the financial service industry looks like. What are the colors people are using in their identity? How are they grouped? What are the popular colors? How many colors in the logo? I can show you all that. And I can show you how financial service industry looks against all other industries, so you can have a benchmark. But then if financial service industry is primarily blue, which we could anticipate anyways, right? Then you can decide for that brand that you rebrand or put in the market, you as a designer, you can make a decision. Am I going to go with a shade of blue because I want to enter it into the milieu? I want to enter it into the common, understanding of financial services, and I want to capitalize on what's already built. Yeah. Or do I want to differentiate from them? And will I differentiate within the blue family to a different shade? Or will I differentiate altogether? And I'm going to become your new T-Mobile, with shocking pink coming into to communicate a different set of attributes. And by the way, on the platform, you can also see which attributes are connected with the colors that you're proposing. Because we have 10,000 studies in the back informing that too. So you can stand on a much safer ground, making a decision, which at the end is your creative decision.
Yeah, but at least it's backed up, and that is, I think, that's what a lot of people are in need of. Hence, also indeed me being so interested in getting you on the podcast. And you just mentioned blue.
Yep.
And so when you work for clients, generally they always want to know what color will attract people to my product. Like, Judith, what is the most universal color liked in color psychology? And I think we all know blue generally, universally, seems to be it depends on which type of blue again, but as a color family, it tends to be one of those colors that tends to be enjoyed. But then again, it depends on the product. It depends on the research that you still have to do. How would you help a customer doing that? Or, for example, are there other colors that are, according to your research, are also widely accepted?
Yeah. I'll say to you this. One of the results of a study that we did years back showed that primary colors usually are connected with primary emotions. Mm-hmm. And so primary emotions, in the world of emotions, you can think on primary emotions, secondary emotions, tertiary emotions. The primary emotions, there are 7, are considered to be universal emotions. So we all have them, right? We all know what love feels like. We all know what, disgust feels like, or fear. Primary emotions. Blue is an interesting color because it doesn't connote a lot of negative emotion. Red, on the other hand, has the duality to it. It's about love and it's about fear. It's about anxiety. It's about hate.
Danger. Yeah, it indicates danger.
Exactly. So this color, for instance, which is universally accepted, triggers this duality. And you need to understand the tonality of red. If it's, the blue undertone will make red a whole lot more pleasant, a whole lot more pinkish, a whole lot more lovable, right? So we have data on this. We have research on this. It's not a lot of research, I have to say, but it's there. Then we can do the numerical exercise of just looking at what people love within an industry. So I know it based on the colors they chose for their identity. And if I showed you the profile of industries, it's going to be shocking to you that all industries, with very few exceptions, are primarily blue, black, and red. These are the colors. Now, are they particularly liked? I don't know that this is a question of like or dislike. It's a question of how people believe they should appear in the world. So, blue.
It's about familiarity. Almost.
So there is familiarity, there is pragmatic considerations such as you stand out. As they say in the branding age space, you can never go wrong with a black, white, red combination from an identity standpoint. You just can never go wrong, right? And so it's clear, it's precise, it's commanding. The contrast between black and white is sharp, is clean, is elegant, is professional. And these have become values that the professional world globally is subscribing to and aspiring to. So in that sense, it's not even a discussion of like or dislike. It's just a question of, how do I believe I should show up in the world? But blue, to be more precise, is cutting across so many identity designs. Not so much, by the way, in cars, not so much in fashion, unless, for menswear. But blue is not necessarily a trending color in fashion.
Unless it's jeans. But we can talk about jeans, whether it's truly blue or not. Yeah,
Exactly. Not so much in nail polish, although recently there is a blue nail polish, but this is not necessarily a common color. So to the point you were making earlier, it's very contextualized. It's a question of within which context, in which product. We know that blue in food is a big no-no. So, because of the connotation of mold and all that. So it's impossible to actually answer this question intelligently without parsing to what product. It's a strategic question. to which audience, in which market, with which product. That's the question that any strategy answers.
Yeah.
And color strategy, for that matter, answers the same question. To which audience, in which market, with which product. And within that context, we can make sense of the color choice that from that point onwards, it's very easy, relatively speaking, which is because the data is there.
Yeah, that was exactly my point. And that's why I asked that question, because I just wanted to debunk that myth, which you just perfectly did, indeed.
Yeah. It's debunkable. It's easy.
Completely. No, indeed. And then in the end, with data, everything is completely debunkable, of course.
Exactly.
But for us who have been working in color for so many years, and there's people listening that have been working in color over 60 years even. And it is, as I said earlier, it's become a hype. Color is a hype. I'm starting to see the first designs for Milan Design Week. We're seeing already that colorful expression is huge. It's increasing popularity on social media. You can see everybody's doing color. I mean, even now, Shutterstock, Getty Images, Pinterest, they're serving us color preferences.
Yeah.
I mean, what is your sentiment on that compared to also your service that you're offering, but also just generally what's happening on social media on color fields?
I think that if you think on the movement in the world, and it's more, I'll say, you have background for this from political sciences. I think if you think on the movement in the world, which the internet brought a lot of this to the west side of the world, especially, but not just, of self-expression, the ability to participate as a unit of one in the world, right? Once upon a time, you were Dutch and I was Israeli, and we were belonging with a bigger cluster. And then we were our companies, and now we can be a persona of one that shows up in the world and has a voice and has followers and has identity to it. And one of the most important and, by the way, easiest ways to have a voice is through your self-expression through color. So the explosion of that, right? So you stand out, you own a color. I always toyed with the idea of giving you the ability of naming your color in my database, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be your color, and we'll just call it yours because color is endless. So why not giving people ownership of the color they most love? So owning a color and owning the color identity is one aspect of it. Of course, we can go to the lamest, corner now to say, well, pandemic hit us so hard and now we want a little bit more joy and all that. Maybe there is a little bit of that as well. But I think that the platform just allows you to express, and the expression on these platforms is voice and visual. Yeah. So I think that's what triggers a lot of it. Whether or not other people offer sentiment analysis on color, I think that's great. I think it just is. It takes us to begin to kind of, we'll call it trade color in a more informed way. Another question is, how informed do you actually want to be? Because luck prefers the prepared mind. So do you want to be well informed? Do you want to be well inspired? I'm just going to give you a quick example. Since I read all the art that existed in the world, and literally all the art as captured by the Louvre and a few other museums around the world, and we're talking about 300,000 pieces of art. I can tell you what's the palette of Van Gogh versus Jackson Pollock versus Frida Kahlo versus whoever. So when you do your design work, there's so much inspiration that can come from looking at the color combinations that those masters of color have put in place, which gave them the status of being a Van Gogh.
Yeah, and it's there for you to use.
It's there for you to enjoy. And then you can contrast it with how color comes in nature, because that perhaps was their major source anyways, right? There was no social media. And then you can contrast it with the colors on social media. And then you can contrast it on the colors that came from fashion. And you can now sit within that space and ask yourself, so what's next? And tap that white space that comes from all, these very colorful areas. This is a lot more than just color sentiment. Yeah. So there's a question on how much information do you actually want? And it's good that we have different services at this point where we can elevate the conversation, and we don't need to be alone in this. The decision of making the color decision as a designer, you would know it, is a heavy decision because it's riskful.
Yeah, it is.
And so you don't need to be alone in this,
Exactly.
It's like my grandmother was a physician. Back in then, what data existed in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, right? There were just books. You read them when you studied, you got your degree, off you went to heal people, right?
Yep. And you tried.
You tried your best, but you were very lonely. And if you didn't fix it right, that guy could have died.
Yeah.
You don't need to be alone in this, and you don't need to replicate that behavior, right? Which is for many designers, this is still the behavior. I'm just going to, read a little bit on what's going on. I'm going to read a lot on what's going on. I'm going to spend endless hours on the internet trying to make sense and pull from my yin yang and all those reference points, something into a mood board. This is from yesterday. Yeah. It can still serve you, but you can do a little bit more than that. The question is for you to decide how much information you need.
Yeah, and also with all the, let's say, there's a lot of data online, but that not necessarily is true either about color. So this is also a way of filtering it, Adit.
Yes, because color, this is partially, at one point I decided I'm going to go and grab all the research on color. It's published. So all the research that's ever been published on color, I just want to have it in one place, parsed. So I don't need to say, oh, people basically love this, that, and the rest. We don't know. This is a lot of gossip out there. Color gossip, it's called, right? We have no idea if it's true or not.
Yeah.
The methodologies used, if you look under the hood on many of those claims, you will see how empty they are. Yeah. They're empty.
That's true.
And so they came in a time where we had nothing else, but now we have something.
Yep. And people want the backbone of research and of choices being made. I went to your website, of course, and you have a very fun part, an interesting part is about global color emotions, which I think generally, the cultural part behind color is like, a whole different part. And then a part called unicorn. Seriously, yeah. What is that?
No, so this is just, it's an index. So I'm thinking on, going back to the business world, the trendsetters in the business world are the unicorns because they're showing us the possibilities of the 21st century because of their use of technology. So they're showing us what does it mean to be global and what does it mean to be technology savvy and what does it mean to be online, what does it mean to be in the metaverse and so forth, right? And I think that looking at how they dress themselves up, how they themselves look, is going to give us the freshest view on companies' identity. Mm-hmm. So we created the Unicorn Index, where you can just take a look at who are they, not in terms of what they do, but in terms of their color kind of shtick, right? How they package themselves. And that keeps getting updated because unicorns are continuously being added. There are the young people, that drive generally speaking, right? That kind of drive the new us, new you and the new me.
True. Yeah, I know. That's okay. Now I got it. Interesting. Very interesting. And obviously another great topic is it's the metaverse.
Yes.
I launched the podcast just this week with a crypto art curator who obviously also debunks some stuff on the metaverse, and nobody knows where this is going. Nobody even knows where it's going to end. We did not know with the internet either.
Yeah.
But you already are seeing colors being used for the metaverse, right?
That's right.
Can you a little bit give some background on that?
Yeah, so we actually audited the colors of the metaverse not too long ago to get a sense. We published just a few infographics on this. In my book, there are, I'd say, very few classes of innovation that are really interesting. There can be product innovations. There can be, some sort of a technical innovations that color has technical innovations. I can tell you some examples of this if that's of interest. And then there is a business model innovation. And the metaverse is a business model innovation. So all the colors that once upon a time had to eventually drill back to real tangible products no longer need to be real and tangible. Yeah. And that's the unbelievable beauty of that, right? So they can be whatever you want them to be. And the colors of the metaverse look like our best understanding of the sweetest dream we could possibly have. They're very vivid. They're very vibrant. The color combinations they're very dynamic. They radiate dynamism. which is and fun. Very kind of light and fun and bright
fantasyful. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. In many ways, if you think on this more, I'll call it maybe socially or anthropologically, there is a whole group of people now that is entering into this age easily because they already are in Fortnite and already are in Decentraland and already are on Roblox and already are on all the platforms of the metaverse. And so for them, this is their color experience. Now, you want to tell me what J. Crew sweater they want to buy? You know, so they are not going to go for the solid, boring colors. Their understanding of the color environment in which they are nested is vibrant, fluid, quick. That this is where they are. And so you've seen the fashion houses now launching on the metaverse, right? Balenciaga did quite a number of people have done runway shows on the metaverse week. And sometimes exclusively on the metaverse. Yep. Nike has a Nike Land, Van has their own park, and so on and so forth. These colors are trendsetters. They're kind of giving us an understanding of what that reality that doesn't have a physical face to it looks like. Yeah. And to the point you made earlier on how much of a color explosion exists now on social and just in general, that's going to get exponentially so on the metaverse, because the metaverse is now new ground zero for new innovation, right? So every person that walks onto the metaverse, metaphorically, of course, can create whatever they want. There is no physical limitation.
And what you then see is that in, let's say, my color communities, we're trying to grasp that. We're trying to understand it. We understand it, but still, people want to translate it. And I think that's only certain generations. I'm myself and just a millennial still going on Xer. We try to translate it to the real world. Yeah. And that is, I think, in my personal opinion, that is the mistake.
Yeah, it is a mistake.
Because you can't. And that's the whole point, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. There's a question of, can you become a designer for the metaverse? And just that. And just
what you'll do. Yeah.
Exactly. And whether it's even going to be needed. Because you see, that's another issue. So my take is it will be needed. It's a different type service. But it's kind of down the road. Down the road, when you have your own place to decorate in the metaverse, you might need help of a designer who knows how to think on creating ambience, which might not be your ability to think on. And since the opportunities are limitless, this is overwhelming for most people that still want to look good.
And they come from the real world, like the physical world, and they designed for the physical world. Exactly.
So the issue here for a designer, in my opinion, is to commercialize not the physical assemblance of colors, but the aesthetics capacity, the capacity to create aesthetic environments and or else purposeful environments from a color perspective. So, for instance, in the physical world, we always deal with the question of what should be the color gamut for, or the color combination for a hospital so that it will induce healing. What might that be? In the virtual world, it's a question of the aesthetics of creating that purposeful environment in a place that's limitless, that doesn't have any commercial consideration to it in the sense of, I cannot reproduce this color, or it's very expensive to reproduce it, or what have you, right? None of this.
Or longevity, like I need to be looking at this for the next 20 years, so I better choose.
Exactly, it's a switch and we're no longer looking at this. So somebody has to be the color strategist that will tell you how fast to retire colors. Maybe you should have a daily appearance. We can do it's limitless. It's laminal and limitless, right? Laminal in the sense that it goes between, physical and virtual, and limitless because virtual is limitless. That's the brilliance of the metaverse. The set of considerations have to be on aesthetics and purposefulness, and not so much on anything else.
Yeah, it's a topic that I think most people can they can never know enough about. Hence, also indeed, it's coming back in many conversations, but also many conversations in the podcast. We talk about the future of color, where color is going, or let's say color innovation. And we just clearly mentioned that the metaverse is about color innovation as well. But do you believe there's other color innovations that are of interest currently?
I'll give you an example of something that I was looking at and published on just recently, which is brilliant. People from Harvard and MIT developed an ink that you can put into a tattoo, and it reflects blood sugar level that you have. Now, this is a brilliant way to take color. And again, it's not on the aesthetic side, although it's beautiful. And you can, of course, beautify it as much as you like.
It has purpose. True purpose.
It has purpose. It has purpose. And that purpose is supremely innovative, unique, and so helpful because it gives someone real-time analytics, so to speak, on their health, on a universal problem so many people have. So, color can go there as well. Color can blend more strategically into other domains of our lives. In this particular case, health. The conversation we just left was on color innovation that induces healing in a hospital environment, or learning in a learning environment, or tranquility in a hospitality environment, or eating in a restaurant environment. For instance, research shows that if you put food on red plates, people eat 43% less.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can marry color with other intents.
Yeah. I'm buying red plates, by the way. Yeah. I'm going to IKEA this weekend.
Exactly. Research shows that if I gave you M&Ms, for instance, in 10 colors versus 7, you will eat a whole lot more M&Ms because of the color variety, because it becomes a little bit of a game. Oh, let me try this one. Oh, let me try this one. If it's all the same 3 colors, you're just going to eat a whole lot less. So if you think on, the candy industry, which needs to be curbed substantially because of sugar until we find something, that might be almost a regulatory issue.
Yeah.
Do you want the population to become increasingly more obese? Or do you want them to, if they do try candy, only have a few?
Yeah.
Well, the regulator has no clue that this is even identified as a thing. If they knew, maybe there was a marrying of intents that are purposeful at the societal level. So where can color go? Where color should go next is color is a vehicle. Now you gotta ask yourself, what are you using it for? So in the earliest days, people have used it to differentiate, and people have used it to sell more, essentially, in the commercial space. And in the arts, it was just expression, of our perception of life. I don't know if there are other utilities to it.
Yeah, true.
Today, because we can be so much more informed, and I'm not going to claim that Huedata is the holy grail, but Huedata takes us one step deeper into becoming more informed. Then you can make color intentful.
Yeah. And
it's not just going to be to sell more. It can be to heal better. It can be, there is for instance, in the way people take drugs, there is a huge compliance issue. People are subscribed different medicine and they don't take it. If the color is appealing to you personally, you might actually take it. Yeah. If the drugs that you take came in 10 colors opposed to 1, you may actually, it is the same drug. It's just a little bit more playful. You might actually take it. So color can serve a grander purpose.
Yeah. And I think
the lame commercial one.
I think that is exactly, and it's so funny that you're coming from a business background. I've talked to people who do color therapy, color gnostics. I've talked to people who do color for chocolates, for pastries, architects. But in the end, in all the conversations, we're seeing that we want to be using color to create a better world, not to sell more.
Yes, exactly. And today, because we finally have, at least this platform, and I hope there'll be additional platforms that are coming up, a way to structure the unstructured.
Yeah.
Okay? If color is unstructured as a phenomenon, we now have a better way to structure it. Once you have a way to structure something, you can better understand it. Once you have a way to understand it, you can utilize it. You can utilize it purposefully. If you don't understand it, you can't use it. So you will be forever lame. Despite all the efforts that you will make, you will be forever lame. It's just like the human body. You don't understand it, you can't do much with it. You understand it, you can become purposeful. That's the transformation that people like myself are trying to inject into the color world. And I'm not alone in this, and I'm not going to have the need to be alone. I think that together we can, advance it. Yeah. So, it's now on people like you and I to bring new methodologies and to educate the next generation designers to use different tools and expand their view and their vision and purposefulness.
Yeah. That's also indeed the exact reason why I started this podcast, by interviewing people like you with different points of view, and to make people understand more what color can do, the power of color, but also the so many different aspects. And I'm very sure that people were inspired by you and indeed what you do with your company. And I could keep talking on for hours, but I really want to thank you for this conversation. And I hope that together, indeed, we can bring more knowledge to the color audience.
Yes, thank you so much. It's a big passion of mine, as you can see now. And I'm exactly trying to do that. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. So thank you for the opportunity to speak on this with you.
Thank you, Anat. Thank you for listening to my episode with Anat and talking about the business side of color. Now, in my next episode, I'm going to be talking to Leslie Harrington. Leslie Harrington is really concentrating on color strategy, but we're also going to be talking about the future of color. And not just that, we're going to be talking about the future of color forecasting. So stay tuned for the next episode launching in 2 weeks' time. Now, for those of you who haven't done so yet and you're listening on Spotify, please go to the show, review and rate. Same for Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this podcast. Feedback is always welcome. So let us know what you think of our episodes, what you think of the show, and I wish you a great rest of your day.